Welcome back. In the last two lessons, we explored what gerunds and infinitives are. But the real question is, when do you use a gerund and when do you use an infinitive? Look at these pairs of sentences. You can say, I like to swim and I like swimming. But you can only say, I enjoy swimming, not I enjoy to swim. This is where many learners get confused, and today we are going to clear it up. In this video, we will compare gerunds and infinitives side by side. Then we will look at verbs where the meaning changes depending on the form you choose, and finish with a short quiz to test your understanding. Let's get started. Here is a quick review of gerunds and infinitives that we learned in our previous videos. A gerund is a verb with ing, but it functions as a noun. For example, reading, traveling, drawing. In sentences, gerunds behave just like ordinary nouns. An infinitive is to plus base verb, like to read, to travel, or to study. Infinitives can act as nouns, adjectives, or adverbs, which makes them very flexible. The key point is this: both gerunds and infinitives can function as nouns. That's one of the main reasons learners mix them up. Sometimes both forms can appear in the same place. Since the basics are clear, let's see how they differ. Before we look at the differences, let's look at why gerunds and infinitives confuse so many learners. The problem is simple. Both forms can follow verbs. Sometimes both are correct. Sometimes only one is correct. And in some cases, the meaning changes completely. Take these examples. You can say, I like to swim, and I like swimming. Both are correct and natural. But you can only say, I enjoy cooking. You cannot say, I enjoy to cook. So the big question is, how do you know which form to use? That's exactly what we will learn in this lesson. Now let's compare gerunds and infinitives side by side. First, in terms of function. A gerund acts as a noun. For example, reading helps me relax. Here, reading is the subject, a noun. An infinitive can also act as a noun, as in, to relax is important. Here, to relax is the subject. But infinitives can also act as adjectives, like in, I have a book to read. The infinitive describes the noun, book. And infinitives can also act as adverbs. I came to help. The infinitive explains the purpose here. So, infinitives are more flexible. Next, look at the meaning. Gerunds usually describe real or general actions, things that actually happen. For example, he enjoys reading novels. Reading is something he already does. It's real in his life. Infinitives often express future or intended actions. For example, he hopes to visit Japan. Visiting Japan is a future goal or possibility. He wants to do it in the future. And finally, position. Gerunds commonly follow prepositions, like before leaving or without asking. After modal verbs, we always use the bare infinitive, the infinitive without to. For example, can go, should help, might come. We use the full infinitive, to, plus verb, to express purpose, as in to buy, to get, or to discuss. For example, I came to study, or she opened the window to get some fresh air. So, the key idea is, gerunds describe real or general actions, while infinitives describe future or intended actions. Both gerunds and infinitives can act as nouns in a sentence. They can both be subjects or objects. And this is exactly why learners often get confused. They sometimes appear in the same position, but the meaning they express is different. A gerund usually describes a real or general action, something that actually happens. For example, look at the sentence. I remember locking the door. When you follow remember with a gerund, you are looking backward. You are recalling a memory of something you already did. So this sentence means you have a clear memory of locking the door. The action is completed. An infinitive, on the other hand, often describes a future or intended action. If we say, I must remember to lock the door, we are now looking forward. We are setting a reminder for a future action. This means the door is not locked yet, and you are telling yourself not to forget to do it. So yes, both forms can act as nouns, but they do not mean the same thing. Choosing a gerund or an infinitive changes the meaning, and that's why selecting the right form is so important. To explain this point clearly, we are focusing on 3 verbs: stop, try, and forget. But it's also important to know that there are other verbs in English, such as regret, need, and go on, where the meaning changes depending on whether you use a gerund or an infinitive. These verbs follow the same pattern of meaning change. Okay, now it's your turn. Look at each pair of sentences here and see if you can figure out the difference in meaning. Notice how the meaning changes when we use the ing form and how it changes when we use to plus verb. Pay attention to the shift in time or intention in each pair. In a moment, I'll show you the answers and you can check if you are right. Now it's time to see the answers and understand the differences. Feel free to pause the video here to check your answers and the meanings given here. See how the simple switch between the ing form and the infinitive completely changes the meaning in each pair. This is the power of mastering gerunds and infinitives. Now here is something that often surprises learners. For some very common verbs, you can use either a gerund or an infinitive, and the meaning doesn't change at all. It's simply a matter of preference. For example, I like reading and I like to read mean exactly the same thing. Both are perfectly natural and both are correct. The same is true with verbs like love, begin, start, and continue. You can say, they love singing, or they love to sing. It started raining, or it started to rain. She continued working, or she continued to work. In all of these, there is no difference in meaning. The choice often depends on what sounds more natural to you, or what fits better in the flow of your sentence. So remember this. Sometimes gerunds and infinitives change the meaning, but sometimes both forms are perfectly acceptable with no difference at all. Now let's look at one of the clearest differences between gerunds and infinitives. It all comes down to whether you are dealing with a preposition or you're expressing a purpose. First, after any preposition, we always use a gerund. So words like of, in, on, at, about, with, without, always take a gerund. Look at these examples. She left without saying goodbye. They talked about moving abroad. In these sentences, without and about are prepositions, so they are followed by the gerunds saying and moving. So the rule is simple. If there is a preposition, the next word will almost always be a gerund. Now let's talk about purpose. To explain why someone does something, we use the infinitive. This is where it gets tricky, because it also uses the word to. But here, to is not a preposition. It's part of the infinitive verb, showing intention. For example, he went to the shop to buy milk. I called you to ask a question. Here, to buy and to ask explain the reason or purpose. The reason he went to the shop was to buy milk. The reason I called him was to ask a question. So, to express a purpose, use the infinitive. So remember, a preposition is always followed by a gerund, while we use the infinitives to show purpose. Now let's look at a very specific group of verbs, the ones that are always followed by a gerund. Using an infinitive after them is a very common mistake. You simply have to learn this group. It includes verbs like enjoy, avoid, finish, suggest, consider, mind, recommend, practice, keep, and imagine. Here are some examples. She enjoys reading. He avoids driving at night. They finished cleaning the house. I suggest trying a different method. We are considering moving abroad. I don't mind waiting for a few minutes. The doctor recommended resting. He practices speaking every day. Keep working hard. I can't imagine living there. All of these verbs must be followed by an ing form. So remember, after these verbs, don't use an infinitive. This is a list that you simply need to learn to improve fluency because the pattern never changes. Next, let's look at the group of verbs that are always followed by an infinitive, never a gerund. These include very common verbs like want, need, hope, plan, decide, agree, promise, learn, expect, and fail. You will always use to plus verb after them. Here are some examples. I want to leave early. She needs to rest. They hope to visit Paris. We plan to buy a new car. He decided to apply. They agreed to help. She promised to call. He is learning to drive. I expect to hear from them. And he failed to complete the task. All of these verbs must be followed by to plus verb. This is another group of verbs you simply have to learn because the pattern is fixed and consistent. Now it's time for a quick practice. For each sentence, choose the correct form, a gerund or an infinitive. Pause the video if you need extra time. And when you're ready, resume the video. We will check the answers in a moment. Let's look at the answers now. 1. She avoided speaking in public. The verb avoid is always followed by a gerund. 2. They decided to stay at home. Decide is always followed by an infinitive. 3. He is interested in learning Arabic. After a preposition like in, we use a gerund. For number 4, both answers are actually possible, but they mean different things. I forgot meeting him last week means you did meet him, but you don't remember the event now. It refers to forgetting the past memory. I forgot to meet him last week means the meeting did not happen because you forgot your plan. The meeting never happened. Both forms are possible depending on what the speaker wants to say. 5. Please remember to send the email tonight. Here, we use the infinitive because this is a reminder about a future action. You can say, I remember sending the email last night. This is grammatically correct. But the gerund form would express a past memory, which doesn't fit this context. So, in this sentence, only infinitive, to send, works. 6. It started to rain or it started raining. Both forms are correct and the meaning is the same. 7. Both forms exist in English, but only one fits this sentence. He stopped talking when the teacher entered the room. Here, the gerund is the only form that fits the meaning. He stopped the action he was doing. The infinitive, to talk, is also possible in English, but it has a completely different meaning. He stopped to talk means he stopped another activity in order to start talking. That doesn't match the context in this sentence because in this sentence the teacher enters. Naturally, he stops talking, but not stops something else in order to talk. So the infinitive doesn't fit this context. 8. We plan to travel next summer. Plan is always followed by an infinitive. 9. She suggested visiting the museum. Suggest always takes a gerund. 10. He came to my office to discuss the project. We use the infinitive to show purpose, why he came. Great job. If you got most of them right, it means you are really starting to understand the difference between gerunds and infinitives. And that brings us to the end of our lesson on comparing gerunds and infinitives. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.